Man, the silence on Janela Pass was thicker than Rocky Mountain Chile. My beat-up Ford rattled over the uneven pavement, headlights cutting through the inky blackness like a butter knife through fudge. It was supposed to be a quick scenic drive, a chance to clear my head after a week of city smog and honking horns. Little did I know it would be a night carved into my memory with the sharpest of ice picks. My phone had kicked the bucket miles back, leaving me with only the stark beauty of the moonlit mountains as company. Every creak and groan of the car sent shivers down my spine, the silence punctuated only by the occasional howl of a distant coyote. Then I saw it. A lone figure standing by the side of the road, a dark silhouette against a moonlit landscape. My breath hitched in my throat, adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was the middle of nowhere, and the figure appeared oddly still. Hesitantly, I slowed down, debating whether to stop. Maybe it was just a hitchhiker, but the remoteness of the location made me wary. Just as I was about to inch past, the figure turned, its head snapping toward my car. Terror choked me. The face was inhumanly pale, its eyes reflecting the moonlight with an unnatural luminescence. It wore a tattered cloak, its edges flapping in the wind like skeletal wings. Panic gripped me, paralyzing. In a moment of clarity, I slammed on the gas, the car lurching forward. I glanced back in the rearview mirror, catching a final glimpse of the figure standing motionless as my car sped away. My body trembled as I navigated the winding road. The horrifying image burned into my memory. The deserted highway stretched before me, an endless ribbon of darkness. Every creak and groan of the car sent shivers down my spine. Minutes turned into hours, and the terrifying encounter continued to play in my thoughts. Just when I started to convince myself it was a hallucination, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A dilapidated gas station loomed up in the distance, its windows boarded up and paint peeling off its skeletal frame. It felt like a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. Maybe I could call for help, or at least get my phone to charge long enough to navigate out of there. With a glimmer of optimism, I pulled into the abandoned station. The air hung heavy with an oppressive stillness. Stepping out of the car, I felt a sudden chill, a stark contrast to the warm heater I had just left. The wind whispered through the rusted pumps, creating an eerie moan that echoed through the emptiness. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the creak of the swinging door behind me. As I scanned the room, a sudden movement sent a jolt of fear through me. A tattered figure, shrouded in shadow, emerged from a back door. Before I could scream, the figure spoke. Its voice was a rasping whisper laced with sorrow. "Lost your way, hadn't you?" it croaked. Fear choked my voice. I tried but couldn't speak. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a frail, elderly woman. Her face was etched with deep wrinkles, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. It couldn't be the same creature I saw on the road, could it? But the unsettling glow of her eyes sent chills down my spine. Was she real, or some phantom haunting this abandoned station? "Can I help you?" she rasped, her voice cracking with age. "My phone died," I finally managed to stammer. "I need to get out of here." The woman sighed, a sound that resonated with the loneliness of the place. "You shouldn't be here on Janela Pass at night," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "especially not near Red Rock Canyon." Intrigue pricked at my overwhelming fear. "Why not?" I asked, cautiously approaching her. She gestured towards a dusty photo frame lying on a counter. Picking it up, I saw a picture of a young, smiling couple in front of a scenic mountain vista. "They were hikers," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. "Lost their way in a storm near Red Rock Canyon years ago. Never found them." A shiver ran down my spine. Was this ghostly encounter connected to the terrifying figure I saw earlier? There's a legend," the woman continued, her voice barely audible, "about a young woman lost in the mountains, forever searching for her love. They say her spirit haunts the canyon, weeping for what was lost." The pieces clicked into place, the ghostly figure by the road, the sorrow in the woman's eyes. They were connected. But was this woman a vengeful spirit or a lost soul seeking comfort? Curiosity battled with fear. "Do you know how I can get out of here?" I asked, clutching the photo close. The woman studied me with an unsettling intensity. "Follow the old miner's trail," she said, pointing towards a dusty map tacked on the wall. "It's a shortcut, but it leads through Red Rock Canyon." Her words sent a jolt of fear through me. The canyon was supposedly haunted, but the guarantee of finding help. "Isn't there another way?" I pleaded, desperately hoping for an alternative. The woman shook her head, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "There's no other way out. But on the miner's trail, you might find what you're looking for. A way out, or maybe even closure." Her words hung heavy in the air, laced with an ambiguity that sent shivers down my spine. Did she mean closure for the lost hikers, or perhaps for myself? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Desperate for a signal, I checked my phone again. Still dead, my heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at the map, its faded lines marking the treacherous path through Red Rock Canyon. With a deep breath, I made a decision. Staying in this abandoned station with this unsettling woman felt more terrifying than facing the unknown. "Thank you," I mumbled, placing the photo back on the counter. The woman offered a thin smile, its sadness lingering in her eyes. "Good luck," she whispered, her voice barely a sigh. Stepping back into the cold night air, I felt a weight settle on my shoulders. The moon, once a beacon of hope, now cast an unsettling glow on the path leading to the canyon. Following the faded markings on the map, I ventured deeper into the darkness. The trail narrowed, winding through dense foliage and over jagged rocks. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the occasional rustle in the undergrowth. As I navigated the treacherous path, the air grew colder and a thick mist descended, obscuring the way ahead. Eerie whispers seemed to swirl around me, carrying a mournful melody that sent chills down my spine. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the mist, its translucent form shimmering in the moonlight. My heart lurched, but as it approached, I recognized the sorrowful face of the woman from the gas station. "Don't be afraid," she whispered, her voice filled with a haunting beauty. "I'm here to guide you. It won't be long now." Tears welled up in my eyes, a mixture of fear and a strange sense of peace. This spectral figure, once terrifying, now seemed more like a sorrowful soul than a vengeful spirit. We walked in silence, the ghostly woman leading me deeper into the canyon. The whispers grew louder, forming a melancholy symphony that resonated within the very essence of the mountain. Then we emerged into a clearing. A lone figure stood by a towering rock formation, her back turned towards me. She was ethereal, shrouded in a soft, shimmering light. As I approached, the figure slowly turned, revealing the face of the woman from the photo at the gas station, only younger, filled with a radiant beauty. A wave of recognition washed over me. This was the lost hiker, her spirit forever searching for her love. Tears streamed down my eyes as I realized the profound depth of her sorrow. The ghostly woman from the gas station nudged me forward. Taking a deep breath, I approached the spirit, a wave of empathy washing over me. "I sought a picture," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "They never stopped looking for you." The ethereal woman turned towards the canyon, a tear rolling down her cheek, shimmering like moonlight. "Neither have I," she whispered, her voice filled with a heartbreaking longing. In that moment, I understood. The woman at the gas station wasn't a vengeful spirit, but her lost love, forever bound to the canyon, searching for solace. With a heavy heart, I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, the ethereal woman spoke once more. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "for remembering." As I walked away, the whispers softened, the mournful melody replaced by a gentle breeze. Reaching the edge of the canyon, I looked back. The mist had cleared, and the clearing was empty. The spirit was gone. The rest of the journey down the miner's trail felt lighter somehow. The oppressive weight of fear had been replaced by a quiet melancholy. As dawn approached, casting a golden glow on the mountain peaks, I stumbled out of Red Rock Canyon and onto the main highway. Exhausted but strangely serene, I flagged down a passing truck and hitched a ride to the nearest town. Though shaken by the events of the night, a sense of closure had settled over me. Back in the safety of civilization, I couldn't help but think of the lost hikers and the love that bound them together. Even in death, it was a poignant reminder of the enduring power of human connection. Later, I contacted the local authorities, recounting my experience and showing them the photo from the gas station. They were skeptical, of course, but promised to investigate the area around Red Rock Canyon. Weeks later, I received news. Human remains had been discovered, partially buried near the spot where I saw the ethereal woman. Dental records confirmed they were the missing hikers. Their story garnered national attention, finally receiving the closure they deserved. As for the abandoned gas station, I returned once during daylight, hoping for some kind of confirmation. It was shut tight, boarded up even more than before. There was no sign of the ghostly woman. But on quiet nights under a full moon, I sometimes swear I can hear a whisper on the wind, a mournful melody echoing across the mountains. It's a chilling reminder of the night I encountered the weeping ghost of Janella Pass, a night that forever changed me, proving that sometimes, even in the darkest places, a faint light of love can still shine through. The headlights sliced through the inky blackness, revealing a desolate two-lane highway stretching endlessly before me. My trusty, beat-up Ford rattled along at a steady 70, the only sound besides the rhythmic hum of the engine being the occasional chirp of unseen crickets. It was the kind of night that made you feel swallowed whole by the darkness, the vast emptiness pressing in from all sides. This wasn't exactly my ideal way to spend a Tuesday night, but thanks to my genius editor Brent, with her deadlines tighter than a tick's backside, I found myself on a solo road trip to interview some reclusive artist in the middle of nowhere. The GPS had died an hour ago, and my trusty paper map looked like a crumpled napkin after a toddler's birthday party. Great. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught my eye in the rearview mirror. A car. Well, that's a relief, I thought. Some company wouldn't hurt. I slowed down a bit, expecting the car to pass, but it remained stubbornly behind me. My gut clenched a little as the headlights grew closer, illuminating a dusty white van with tinted windows. It looked like something out of a creepy abduction movie. Okay, paranoia mode activated. I checked my phone. Still no signal. Fantastic. Picking up the pace, I tried to lose the van in the darkness, but it stuck to me like a leech, its headlights unwavering. My anxiety skyrocketed. What did I even do? Was this some twisted prank by Brenda? Doubtful. She wouldn't risk my life for an article. Another unwelcome thought nodded at me. This wasn't exactly a bustling highway. What were the chances of encountering another car, especially a creepy white van, in the middle of nowhere? My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized I might be in genuine danger. The deserted landscape offered no escape. Fields of tall corn stalks loomed on either side of the road, whistling ominously in the unseen wind. My mind conjured images of unseen figures lurking amongst the stalks, waiting to pounce. Then, without warning, the van lurched forward. It slammed into the back of my car, the force sending me careening into the oncoming lane. My scream died in my throat as I swerved, narrowly avoiding a collision with a pair of oncoming headlights. Adrenaline coursing through my veins, I slammed on the brakes, regaining control as dust billowed from beneath my tires. I glanced back at the van. It had come to a stop a few yards behind me, its headlights seemingly mocking my near-death experience. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. This wasn't a prank. This was bad. Really, really bad. Against my better judgment, I threw the car in reverse, pressing down on the gas pedal. The engine roared as I sped back the way I came, the van a menacing white blur in the rearview mirror. Every bump on the road felt like a nudge closer to disaster. After what felt like an eternity, the road curved, and I sighed. A gas station, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Relief washed over me in waves. It wasn't much, but it was something. I slammed on the brakes, fishtailing slightly before coming to a shaky halt. I scrambled out of the car, my legs wobbling beneath me. The gas station looked like it hadn't seen a customer in decades. The windows were boarded up, peeling paint revealing rotting wood beneath. Still, it offered a potential refuge, somewhere to call for help. As I approached the station, the sound of the van pulling up behind me sent a fresh jolt of fear through me. I froze, then broke into a run, the gravel crunching under my feet. Inside the station, a thick layer of dust coated everything, cobwebs draped from the corners like macabre decorations. The air hung heavy with the smell of decay. Despite the grim ambiance, I found a working payphone bolted to the greasy wall. With frantic fingers, I punched in 911. The line rang and rang and rang. No answer. Panic clawed at my throat. This couldn't be happening. My phone was still dead. I was trapped. Suddenly, a loud bang came from outside. The van. I could hear the unmistakable sound of the driver forcing open the gas station door. I needed to hide. Glancing around the dusty interior, I spotted a back room behind a faded curtain. Praying it wasn't a dead end, I ducked behind the curtain and squeezed through a narrow doorway. The room was cramped and suffocating, filled with stacks of empty boxes and forgotten junk. I huddled in a corner, my heart hammering against my ribs. With every creak of the floorboards outside, I imagined the driver getting closer. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The silence in the cramped room was broken only by my ragged breaths. Then, a sound. A faint scratching noise coming from somewhere above me. Panic surged through me again. Was the driver in the room? Hesitantly, I strained my neck to look through the cluttered boxes. Above, a small ventilation grate loomed, partially blocked by cobwebs. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed a dusty metal toolbox leaning against the wall. Using its edge, I pried at the grate, dislodging the cobwebs and sending down a shower of dust. The scratching sound intensified. This wasn't the driver. A horrifying thought struck me. Were there more of them? Animals, maybe. But what kind of animals scratched at vents in abandoned gas stations? Desperation fueled my actions. I clambered on top of the boxes, hoisting myself onto the toolbox. It creaked ominously under my weight, but I held my breath and pried harder. Finally, the grate gave way, crashing onto the floor. A wave of stale air and a musty scent of insulation assaulted my senses. But more importantly, I saw what was causing the scratching sound. A pair of terrified eyes stared back at me. Not glowing red eyes of some monster, but large, round, and undeniably human. Relief washed over me so strong I almost toppled off the boxes. It wasn't a monster after all, just another person, another victim. The girl, no older than 18, her face a mask of dirt and fear, reached out a hand to me. With a shaky grip, I grabbed her hand and pulled her into the small room. We collapsed in a tangled heap on the dusty floor, both panting heavily. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. She took a ragged breath. "Sarah, I was driving home when that van ran me off the road. I crawled in here to hide." The horror in her voice mirrored my own. We huddled together in the cramped space, the silence broken only by our shallow breaths and the occasional creak from outside. It wasn't a comfortable situation, but at least I wasn't alone. We were both terrified, but somehow her presence gave me a sliver of hope. After what seemed like an eternity, faint sirens pierced the dense silence. We exchanged a glance, hope flickering in our eyes. The sound grew closer, and moments later, flashing red and blue lights filled the doorway. Relief threatened to overwhelm me as two police officers cautiously entered the room. We stumbled towards them, a jumbled mess of exhaustion and fear. Sarah and I were ushered outside, blinking in the harsh light of the police cruisers. The officers, after hearing our story, looked skeptical at first, but upon inspecting the van, they found it abandoned, the engine still warm. There was no sign of the driver. Later, at the police station, a call from a nearby trucker confirmed our story. The mystery of the driver and his motives remained unsolved, but we were both safe. As dawn painted the horizon with a soft glow, Sarah and I stood outside the station, waiting for a ride back to civilization. The abandoned gas station, now bathed in golden morning light, looked far less menacing. We had faced our fears together, strangers who had become allies in the face of the unknown. And as I drove away, Sarah's grateful smile flashed in my memory. I knew that even though the dead static of the night had tried to consume us, it couldn't snuff out the spark of human connection and the will to survive. Felt like hours. The silence in the cramped room was broken only by my ragged breaths. Then, a sound, a faint scratching noise coming from somewhere above me. Panic surged through me again. Was the driver in the room? Relief threatened to overwhelm me as two police officers cautiously entered the room. We stumbled toward them, a jumbled mess of exhaustion and fear. Sarah and I were ushered outside, blinking in the harsh light of the police cruisers. The officers, after hearing our story, looked skeptical at first, but upon inspecting the van, they found it abandoned, the engine still warm. There was no sign of the driver. Later, at the police station, a call from a nearby trucker confirmed our story. He had witnessed a white van swerving recklessly on the highway before the station came into view. The mystery of the driver and his motives remained unsolved, but we were both safe. As dawn painted the horizon with a soft glow, Sarah and I stood outside the station, waiting for a ride back to civilization. The abandoned gas station, now bathed in the golden morning light, looked far less menacing. Our ordeal had been terrifying, but it had also forged a bond between us. We had faced our fears together, strangers who had become allies in the face of the unknown. And as I drove away, Sarah's grateful smile flashed in my memory. I knew that even though the dead static of the night had tried to consume us, it couldn't snuff out the spark of human connection and the will to survive.